topics and opinions expressed in the following show are solely those of the hosts and their guests and not those of W4CY Radio, its employees, or affiliates. We make no recommendations or endorsements for radio show programs, services, or products mentioned on air or on our web. No liability, explicit or implied, shall be extended to W4CY Radio or its employees or affiliates. Any questions or comments should be directed to those show hosts. Thank you for choosing W4CY Radio.
Welcome to the Ask the Expert show on W4CY Radio and Talk4 TV, where we bring you educational information from top local experts in the fields of legal, health, financial, and home improvement. Now sit back and listen to experts in family law, association law, hearing loss, business brokers, home care, along with many other topics. Now here are your hosts, Steve-O and Sophia.
Hey, good morning. Welcome to another Ask the Expert show where we bring you the top experts in the field of legal, health, financial, and home improvement. Last night I went and I counted. We have 35 experts that are affiliated with the Ask the Expert show after 15 years. I have to be very careful on who I endorse, but this morning's show for the next 50 minutes, it's actually, I looked at it, it's a tie between this expert and one other expert who've been with us over 10 years. And I got to tell you, I totally endorse this company, Taxation Solutions. They have been with us for a long time. And you learn over the years from letters you receive about how people respond to their to our experts, and we always get so many positive letters, and it's such to me a blessing to do a show with Barry Fowler, who's the president and founder of Taxation Solutions. He's an enrolled agent, and we'll get into that for those of you who do not know what an enrolled agent is. He's licensed to represent taxpayers before the dreaded IRS. His experience in the tax and finance industry spans literally over 30 years. His expertise includes taxation resolution, tax planning, tax return preparation, and he's been very instrumental in helping literally thousands of people resolve complex tax issues with the IRS. My favorite, Barry Fowler.
Hey, good morning, Steve-O. It's great to be here and Ask the Experts. You know, we only have 3 weeks left till the filing deadline, April 15th.
That's right.
So if you haven't filed, you know, it's time to get in there and get your tax returns filed now. If you need an extension, don't wait till the 15th. Just get an extension in and get that taken care of as well. The one thing I do want to remind everybody is an extension is just an extension of time to file, not an extension of time to pay. So if you're going to owe taxes, you know, get those payments in before April 15th. So that's my public service announcement for the day. And I think we're going to go back to ranching.
Yes. Barry, you've been doing this for a long time.
Yeah.
And I got to tell you what's so amazing about how long you've been in business. You know, I think a lot of people fail because they get so many black marks against them, people not happy with their service. But for you to be in business as long as you've been in business for, I mean, and get through the C word and everything else associated with that, I'm just amazed that your reputation has gotten you as far as it's gotten you.
Well, we pride ourselves in taking care of our clients and doing everything we can for them, you know, within the rules and the laws and the manuals that the IRS requires us to jump through to help our clients and getting the most out of what our clients are giving us, and even sometimes helping them reorganize their life. You know, funny story is that, you know, the other day I was dealing with a a client who has a habitual problem of not paying their taxes, and they're like, hey, what can we do? And we're like, well, first off, you need to make sure you're making your estimated tax payments every month or every quarter, however is easier for you to make those payments. But the first thing to sit down and do is, why don't you sit down and do a family budget and budget out what you're going to spend, so that where your income and where your money is going to. And it makes a lot more sense if you go through and do this. And they're like, budget? What's a budget? So, we help people reorganize their life. We try to make it a little bit simpler so that they understand that, hey, they've got to make these payments to the IRS to be able to get them the best deal, and to get get them on the straight and narrow, so they're not having a continued tax problem. They're like, well, what else can we spend to save money on taxes? Well, you don't have anything. You owe almost $1 million. It's time to reorganize your life first, and then let's look at all the strategies to help you as well. But we've got to get you back to square one.
Barry, we always talk about individuals, but you work with a lot of businesses. And by the way, people love your stories. It seems you've got a story for everything. But let's talk about what you do for businesses.
Well, businesses, for the most part, depending on how they're set up, is going to be, a lot of times it's payroll taxes. With inflation that we dealt with for the last 4 years, with costs just continuing to increase, people, when you're in business, one of the easiest things to not pay is the payroll taxes. You got to pay your employees because you're afraid they're going to leave and quit. But those payroll taxes, nobody quits. When you don't pay the government doesn't quit on you. Matter of fact, the government now just picks it up and it comes after you for every dime that you owe them. And so, you avoid paying those payroll taxes, and then it's 6 months to a year down the road and the IRS is coming after you. So you've got to put a solution into place. And there is no offer and compromise or settlement on payroll taxes. They want their payroll taxes. Matter of fact, more than half of what you're supposed to be sending in is money you've pulled out of your employee's check. That was not your money. That was the employee's money that you pulled out and supposed to pay the government. And they start issuing then trust fund penalties over that money. It means now not only does your business owe the money, but you and anybody else that's a signer or has authority to make a decision who gets paid is subject to being hit with that trust fund penalty. And they'll collect from everybody and anybody that they possibly can. Even if you're a manager of a business that signs on a checking account, you could be held responsible for those payroll taxes that the business didn't pay. And we've seen that happen. And when that does happen, man, that's terrifying, because, you're not only, looking out for the business, but now all of a sudden you're getting hit for something that you shouldn't have had any responsibility for, but you were required to by the IRS.
We just got a first text from Mildred. She said, my husband owns a business where he's incorporated, but he owes the IRS money. Can they come after me personally?
Well, so if it's payroll taxes that the business owns, so depending on how he files it, so maybe he's an S corp. Mildred, we're not sure exactly how you're set up. You can call our office at 877-996-6477, and we can talk to you a little bit more about the business and what's going on. But if he's an S corp, it's usually payroll taxes. If you're a C corp, you're filing on 1120. The business would then owe the tax because it pays its own tax, and then distributes dividends to your husband, who would be the owner of the business. But if it is an 1120S, then it passes through to you, and you're going to pay your federal income taxes on your personal return. If you're filing a joint return, yes, you can be held liable for those back taxes that are not being paid. Now, if you're married, filing separate, no, you're not going to be held responsible. Or if you didn't sign the return, and let's say your husband signed for you, maybe there's innocent spouse. So there's a lot of different things we've got to look at to see who would be responsible, how you're going to be held responsible, or how we can get you out of responsibility if you're looking to get away from that responsibility of paying those taxes.
We just got another text in. If a company goes out of business, can the IRS still come after us for back taxes?
So if a company owes payroll taxes and the trust fund penalty has been issued, you're going to be paying the trust fund penalty. If it hasn't been issued and it's been more than, I think there's 3 years, and you shut the company down and you're not going back into business in a similar business, the IRS isn't going to hold you responsible because they haven't issued this trust fund penalty and the business has closed. But if your business is open, or we've seen this where people think they're outsmarting the IRS, they shut down one business to avoid those payroll taxes that they owe, and they open up another business doing the same thing or very similar. The IRS can still hold that business and you responsible for those taxes. So you can't just trick the IRS because you shut down one LLC or one corporation and move to another one to do the same thing. They know what's going on. They look at that and they're always doing the analysis because, hey, what's the IRS's job? We all know it's to collect money.
Yeah.
They're the largest, biggest, baddest, nastiest collection firm in the world. And hey, we're trillions of dollars in debt. What do you think the IRS is there to do? The IRS isn't going away anytime soon. They're always there to collect the money for the government.
Barry, so I'm here in Florida. We have a much older demographic here, and I see the letters that we get from Florida. People are worried about IRS scams. They get emails, they get phone calls. Can you explain how the IRS works when it comes to collections? Do they send emails out?
The first advice I'm going to give you, if you get an email for collections, delete it. Don't open it. Just hit delete. If you're getting a phone call from somebody, and I mean, if you really listen to what they say, they're not even saying Internal Revenue Service. I mean, it sounds similar, but they're just going through it real quick. You don't pay attention. Hang up the phone because you probably know you don't have a tax debt. Don't let them convince you that you do. IRS is not making phone calls for collections from you. They're going to send you letters. They're going to send you these wonderful love letters. We love your money. You owe us my money. Give me my money. I'm going to come get my money. I'm going to, do a wage garnishment. I'm going to do a Social Security garnishment. I'm going to do a bank levy because it's, in their opinion, their money. Okay, so you're going to get those letters and you need to be responsive to those letters. If somebody calls you and says they're from the Internal Revenue Service, hang up the phone. Pick up the phone and call the IRS yourself. Ask them, do you owe money? Because these guys are scammers. The only time you're going to get calls from the IRS is if you owe them money and you're already dealing with a revenue officer. And you're going to know it because you're already going to be in conversation with them. You've already agreed to providing certain documentation to them by a certain date. And so when you've done all that, then you've established a line of communications and you're going to be conversing back and forth with that revenue officer. But most of the time, you're not going to be in that conversation. You should have representation like us at Taxation Solutions to make sure that you're going to get the best deal that's available to you to settle this, to either put the lowest payment plan in place or put a partial payment installment agreement in place, or even, put you in non-collectible status. Most seniors we deal with, we can even get into non-collectible status and let the statute of limitations run out, and then you never pay a dime to the IRS. And that's what you need. We've got to look at your situation and determine what's right for you. But that's the whole idea, is to get you in the best position possible to get rid of this debt once and for all.
Barry, at the beginning of the show, I spoke about an enrolled agent. And tell people what an enrolled agent is.
First off, enrolled agents do not work for the IRS. The story behind that, and you love my stories. Well, when I became an enrolled agent, I held my CPA license for a long time, became an enrolled agent, which is licensed by the U.S. Department of Treasury to represent taxpayers to the highest levels of the IRS. My dad went, "When did you decide to go work for the IRS?" I said, "Dad, whoa, wait a minute. My whole job is to work against the IRS for the taxpayers. So we work for our clients, not the IRS. We fight the IRS to get you the best deal possible within the confines of the law." So, we had to be tested. So we took a very extensive test on taxes, tax relief, what resolution items we can do, ethics. And then we had to go through a fingerprinting and FBI background check, which I was like, whoa, wait a minute. Background check, FBI? Hey, no big deal. Go ahead and check me out. I don't think I've done anything wrong. All free and clear there many, many years ago, and still am. And then we got to do about 30 hours of continuing education. I do about 40 hours of continuing education every year to make sure that I know the ins and outs of the tax law for you, for our clients, to get you the best tax relief possible. Or if we're doing your taxes, to get you every way of reducing your taxes on your tax return, regardless of how you're filing. That's what our goal is always to do, is save you as much money as possible.
Hey, Barry, and I asked you about this on our last show. And by the way, Barry has his own show. It's on Mondays, right, Barry?
Mondays, 10 a.m. Eastern time, right here on Talk 4 TV, W4CY Radio. You can find us at taxtalk4u.com. Go over there and subscribe. Never miss an episode. We have some great podcasts and previous episodes on if you're thinking about doing tax relief yourself. We've got Tax Solutions 101, Tax Solutions 201, kind of ran them as a college course, crash course on getting yourself a solution to your IRS debt. And especially if you decide, hey, I'm a do-it-myselfer and I really want to go do this myself. I don't always recommend it, because you end up kind of being like my wife. She calls the plumber after I finish doing plumbing to fix what I just did. It costs twice as much. I'm allowed to do some irrigation outside on the ranch. That stuff is fine. Inside, not so much. Electrical, as soon as she sees me touch something electrical, she's already calling 911. And hey, we need to get somebody out here to save him before he electrocutes himself. And usually it's an electrician, and the electrician shows up before I can even get out to the electrical box to do anything, because she knows I'm going to make it worse. or I'll probably electrocute myself and be 10 times worse there. Do-it-yourself tax relief is the same thing. Sometimes you make it 10 times or 100 times worse than it has to be. And using a service like us at taxationsolutions.net can save you thousands in what you owe, maybe penalty relief, maybe offering compromise. Maybe it's just that lower installment agreement or non-collectible status that you need to be in that can save you a lot of money. And that's what we're here to do.
I brought this up our last show because we get letters from time to time. Congress spoke of making the form a lot shorter, easier to file your taxes, and it was going to be reduced to almost a postcard. Whatever happened with that?
The postcard got bigger. I mean,
Yeah.
it was really kind of one of those things that, Congress didn't really think about, and they didn't really put the right solution in place. I mean, realistically, a small percentage of the U.S. sends in tax forms. So really, who cares how big the tax form is? Whether it's a postcard size or, 16 by 20 or 10 feet by 20 feet. It really doesn't matter. Most everything's done electronically filing and it's done on the computers. But they didn't really simplify it. They just added more schedules behind it. What they did simplify really helped a lot of Americans, and that is increasing the standard deduction and taking it up to a very high level. Now if you have a lot of mortgage interest and charitable contributions and up to $10,000 in property tax or state and local taxes, you could itemize still. And you can get a better benefit because you're itemizing and going above the standard deduction. But for most Americans, it really simplified it. W-2 really simplified it because you're just filing those W-2s, maybe a little bit of interest income, and it truly simplified the tax code for the majority. Now, hey, those that have a lot more deductions, or maybe they're running their own business and get K-1s or do a lot of investing, the tax code has gotten very difficult, very complex, and you got to make sure you're dotting your I's and crossing your T's because, you're getting distributions from a company and you're getting a K-1, and now maybe you got more distributions than your basis in the company. Now you're going to owe some tax on those distributions that you thought was tax-free. So, that postcard, yeah, it simplified it for the majority of Americans on W-2 with very little other things going on. But other parts of America that have businesses that are being run, maybe one, maybe two, maybe three, or multiple businesses, it became very complicated. And postcard was a great idea, but realistically, the IRS philosophy on postcard was, how much did you make? Send it in. And that was it. And that way they collected everything from everybody, and we'll dole out the money and be socialism, and we'll live off whatever you give us. That's not the way it should be, not the way we want it. Tax code is complex, but also somewhat simpler for W-2 employees.
No, Barry, I got to tell you, what you have done, you're always about educating people, and you really do walk the walk. You actually show people how they can do it themselves, which doesn't really do you any good financially, but you're out there showing people. But you also came out with your IRS playbook, which I think is incredible. Explain the IRS playbook to people you just came out with.
In life, there are certain things that are valuable to me, God, family, country. our taxpayers and our clients, helping people to figure out how to get the weight or the tax monkey off their back when dealing with the IRS. And we've always known for many years that we've got competitors out there that are cutthroat, will say anything, do anything to get people to be clients and charge them whatever they can. So in sitting down and discussing, hey, what can we do to help more people? My wife, Meg, and I were sitting down one evening, and she's like, well, what do you do for our clients, and what are the steps? And we talked about it. She manages the bookkeeping department at truckertaxtools.com and takes care of all of our truckers that we deal with. And I said, we basically break it down into 3 simple steps. And she goes, put a book together. And I went, what? I'm not a writer. She goes, no, seriously, put it together and let's find a way to get it out there and help people. I went, that's brilliant. Let's do it. So we wrote the IRS playbook, 3 simple steps to get the IRS off your back and solve your tax problem. So if you just go to irsplaybook.info, that's not one of our websites. That's not a .com out here to sell you. It's a .info, irsplaybook.info. And you can go in there and subscribe and see the IRS playbook, the 3 simple steps we use to solve tax problems for our clients. And it's all laid out right there. I thought it was a great idea to help people. I credit her with the idea because she was the brains behind it. What else are we going to do to help solve people's tax problems and help them get that tax monkey off their back, get the stress? Better than that, as my wife put it, is get their wives off the husband's back. She goes, I couldn't even imagine if we owed money, what kind of stress I would put on you. See, it's not the stress I caused her. It's the stress that she would be causing me, because not only is the tax monkey on my back, but oh my God, my wife would be riding my case up and down the road every single moment of every single day. And that tax monkey stress is bad. Stress of disappointing your spouse, or the stress that you're putting on your spouse that then is going to be put on you because you're not dealing with the problem. It means it's time to man up and deal with it. Whether you do it yourself through going to irsplaybook.info or calling us at Taxation Solutions, 877-996-6477. Again, 877-996-6477. Do a free consultation. Let's talk about what we can do for you to solve your tax problem and put that solution so that you, your wife, and your family can get back to enjoying life and not dealing with the stress of that tax monkey taking everything you've got out of your pocket, out of your bank account, garnishing your wages, taking your Social Security, whatever it may be. Get that solution in place.
Barry, we hear all kind of national commercials about companies that prepare your taxes, negotiate with the IRS. And I got to tell you, because I've been doing this for a long time, I cannot tell you how many of those companies are no longer in business. And I know the reason why. A lot of, and you wouldn't say this because that's not who you are, but make a lot of false claims, not returning phone calls, not holding up to their promises. So you've been doing this for a long time. You get a lot of people who went to some of these other big companies What are some of the problems that you've seen with some of these bad tax preparers?
Well, the first thing I'm going to tell you, in the tax relief business, people don't listen. You, the taxpayer that's calling them, you're not listening to what they say. All you're listening to is what you want to hear.
Hmm.
And I don't mean this bad about taxpayers and people that owe money, but what you're listening for is that they can settle you for nothing or less
Right.
than what you owe. That's all you want to hear. Everything else besides that, you tuned out because you hear about the dream on the radio. You hear about, oh my God, these people settled for this or settled for that. They didn't pay much in tax or anything else. What you missed was potentially, possibly, maybe those words that basically say everything I said doesn't really exist. It's just, I said it because that's what you wanted to hear. You now have the pipe dream. Man, it's like, hey, I can win the lottery by buying one ticket today and I'm going to be a multimillionaire. Okay. And
Good
you're
example.
possibly guaranteed it, but you only heard guaranteed. That might happen, but you didn't hear that. You might be guaranteed. We might be able to potentially see, these are all key words that these guys are great at selling to you. And, it leads to problems. It leads to problems for us. It leads to problems for you. It leads to problems for them. And why does it lead to problems? Because you fell for it. So if the problem is to you, you're not getting what you think you're paying for. You believe the pipe dream, even though you know darn well, down in your heart, you make way too much money and you're not going to qualify for it, or you got way too much in assets that you're really trying to protect, but you heard the words offering compromise or settle for less potentially, and you think that that's good. It leads to trouble for them, the company that sold you on it, because they sold you a bill of goods that they know for a fact, because if they ever ask the question of assets or equity in their home or how much you make, they know you don't qualify. And now you're upset and they're trying to find ways to bail out and take money and run, or never do the service or charge you more. It leads to problems with us because you call us and you think, we don't know what we're talking about, but we lay it out to you in the free consultation. We talk about it and ask those tough, difficult questions. Now, if you're not going to be honest and answer the questions for us, honestly, we can't help you. We can't tell you point blank, are we going to be able to get to this offer and compromise? Are we going to be able to settle for less than what you owe? Are we going to be able to get you a lower payment plan? But when we come back and we tell you, hey, Jeff, you don't qualify because you're making $100,000 a year, and the IRS, with all the national standards in your area, says you can afford to pay. And they go, well, XYZ tax relief said I qualify. Well, they're wrong. Absolutely wrong. And we can try to show you, but a lot of times you bit off and love the dream, and that's what you're going to go try to live. And it doesn't work. If you don't qualify, you don't qualify. Everybody has the same national standards that we've got to live with to get you to where you would qualify for the offer and compromise, to where we can show them that you can't afford to pay and that you qualify to get this kind of settlement or this kind of payment. And that's where the complications come in. We run into that all the time. Matter of fact, when we do run into that, sometimes people call us back and go, God, you were right. Can we just use your service now? You've complicated it because these guys really screwed up some other things, And now we got to fix other problems that they've caused because they didn't meet deadlines, or they just filed a bogus offer in compromise, which makes everybody's life more complicated because of what they have done. Now, you may be close in qualifying, and I've taken some people that are really close in qualifying and changed some things in their life and got them to qualify for an offer in compromise. And, if you're willing to work with us, there's a lot of things we do that when we sit down and look at your financial situation where you may not qualify today, but we make these 3 changes to things you're doing in your life. And now all of a sudden, hey, you qualify to get an offer and compromise through. And we push that through, right there for you so that, hey, you get that settlement you want. And it starts with that free consultation, at taxationsolutions.net. Go in there. If you don't want to talk right now, go in there and fill out a consultation form. We can call you back. We can call you back after hours and talk about, life, IRS, and what we can do.
We just got a text from Billings, Montana. It's quite early there. I guess I think they're 3 hours behind. Maybe not. They're on Mountain Time. But question that we get asked all the time for your show, Barry. What do you do if you can't afford your tax bill?
You call us. You call 877-996-6477 and let us figure out a solution for you. If depending on how much money it is, and if it's the first year that you actually can't afford, and it's maybe a couple $1,000s and stuff, you can ask for an installment agreement when you file your tax return and get a low payment, something that you can't afford. It's time to reevaluate also what you're doing in life to make sure that they're either withholding enough money from your W-2, or if you're self-employed, you're making enough payments in estimated tax payments. You got to remember that if you're filing 2024's return, now you can set it up for a direct debit on April 15th, or you can actually put in there 9465 and ask for installment agreement on 2024's taxes. And you can put in whatever amount you want as long as it be paid off in the next, roughly 72 to 84 months. But remember, they're going to charge you penalties and interest on that as well. So you want to pay it off as rapidly as possible. And if you're going to be required to make estimated tax payments, that first one becomes that dreaded April 15th as well. And you need to make that estimated tax payment for 2025, which would be the first of 4 that you would make through the year. And so those are the kind of hoops you need to kind of jump through. If you have many years that you owe for, the first thing I tell you to do is check us out at taxationsolutions.net. Go to the Better Business Bureau and check out Taxation Solutions. You can see us there, A+ rating, and then give us a call at 877-996-6477, and let's find the solution that not only helps you with back taxes, but helps you look at your life going forward and making sure that you're not going to continually add to this debt, add to the problems, and make your life worse over the next several years while you're in business, or get you set up to where you're not going to be shut down because the IRS comes at collecting for everything you owe, and tries to take your house, or tries to take your assets from your business, or taking everything from your bank account. And those are the bad things that can happen. We do prevent a lot of that, especially when you're with us and you're working with us to stop the IRS, and you're being diligent working with us as well.
Here's a text from Lake Charles, Louisiana. That's Rebels country. They want to know, have you ever negotiated the interest and penalties with the IRS?
So first off, the IRS isn't going to negotiate interest. They're going to collect interest on any debt that's out there. Now, penalties, yes, we have fought the IRS and got many penalties reduced and waived. And sometimes it's your tax return that's just filed incorrectly, and we can fix a tax return. And once we fix the tax return and get penalties removed, and if the debt comes down, they'll actually reduce the interest as well. So there's a lot of complicated factors involved in everything that we do. Just because the IRS says you owe doesn't really mean you have to owe that money. It could be a problem preparer. It could be a problem on your tax return. It could be deductions that you should have taken that your preparer didn't know to take. It could be the IRS filed a substitute for a return and you think you're having to pay that, but we can actually file the actual tax return and save you money and get it reduced down to the actual amount you should owe. The IRS will go back and recalculate interest, recalculate penalties, and a lot of times that lowers the amount you owe by quite a bit as well. So there's a lot of variables and everything that can happen for you as a taxpayer. And like I said, if the IRS says you owe, it doesn't mean you necessarily owe exactly what they say. We go through and do a complete transcript analysis of every one of our clients before we ever get started. And we can analyze and know everything the IRS knows about you, everything the IRS has as far as a tax return goes, everything that is possible that we can go back in and possibly adjust or fix or amend, or just actually have to go back in and actually file tax returns that you hadn't filed for the last 5 or 6 years. And we don't always go back any further than that. But if the IRS has done substitute for returns, we might go back unless the IRS did a better job of giving you deductions. But I've not seen it very often that the IRS prepares a better return than we could with actual deductions that you should be getting, because the IRS does returns in their favor, not yours, ever.
Barry, I got to tell you, some of my favorite stories, people think that these IRS agents know everything. And I love it, the stories that there's been times that you've actually had to go over the IRS agent's head to their supervisor because they were wrong about the laws that you completely knew about, and you ended up winning. There's times that you go to bat that I know it doesn't happen all the time, but I think those are some of the greatest stories that a lot of times you know more than the IRS agents do.
Sometimes, Steve-O, it's as simple as, you're on this, phone and it's hang up, start again. These agents sometimes have no clue what they're doing, or they read the manual but only got the words collect. I think their mission statement, and I don't think anybody sees this, so I'm kind of just plagiarizing whatever. I think their whole thing says your whole job is to collect at any cost. And it doesn't matter if you make anybody mad, there'll always be a client of the IRS because they are a taxpayer and they can't go anywhere. So it's not the customer's always right, it is the IRS is always right, except for when they're wrong. And you as a taxpayer probably would never know whether the IRS agent is correct in what they're saying of how long they could collect for, or, that they don't have to get all the money here today up front. You don't have to go on a payment plan today, that you can have more time to put together the paperwork. And, not knowing the law as a taxpayer, it's not your fault. Man, the tax code is humongous. The Internal Revenue Manual that we go through and we know the ins and outs, you're not going to go back in and read. And so sometimes I just deal with an agent that's on the phone and I go, this is ridiculous. We're not going to go through and do this. Oops, I had a lost connection. Our voice over IP phones or cell phones, they lose connection all the time, don't they? And if you don't like the conversation and you don't like the revenue agent that you're dealing with, hang up the phone, start again. Yeah, it's time consuming on our part. We spend many a days and hours on hold waiting for the IRS to talk to the right agent. And we go and we get the wrong agent and we start all over again and we go through the process. I try to explain them what the code is. I try to explain some people, here's how the Internal Revenue Manual works. Here's what you're allowed to do. And they don't want to do it. Sometimes you got to go to the manager and ask them. But when you're dealing with somebody on the phone, by just calling the IRS, you never know who you're going to get. And getting to a manager, all they tell you is, we'll have a manager call you in the next 24 years. Because I think hours to them, when it's having a manager call, is years. Because I have never had a manager call me after being on the phone with the revenue agent that is not a revenue officer, that, hey, I complain, I want to talk to the manager, I want to get manager approval, I want to go through this with the manager. They'll say, yes, we'll have them call you in 24 hours. I'm still waiting. I've been in this business a long time and I'm still waiting for that manager to call. Now, if you got a revenue officer, we always, first thing we get when we're on the phone with the revenue officers, who's your manager? Just in case I can't get in touch with you. What's their phone number? And that way I've always got that manager's contact information. I've got contacts with the territory managers as well, so that I know that if my revenue officer isn't helping me and I know I'm right, and the manager won't help me and I know I'm right because of the code, I can go to the territory manager and I can get things done. And that's the difference of having a good professional working for you on your side to save you as much money as possible.
I always like to end the show on a good note. And if you look over to the chat line from Donnie, your wife seems like a really good woman. She's a keeper.
Absolutely, she is. We this year will be married 25 years and enjoying life out on the ranch and everything else. I do have another funny story for you. So I took a steer to the meat processor yesterday, and I asked for the horns and the hooves. And this is the first time I've asked for that. I usually we get everything else. And called my wife. I said, sure, we want to do this. I got to go back and pick them up. You don't want to know what I picked up because it was basically the last joint down to the hoof, and it was not pretty. Got a bag of them, and my wife's like, what are you doing with those? Well, I was going to process them for the dogs. Yeah, honey, I don't know about that. But she's a keeper. She let me do it. But she goes, I knew better.
Tell people how they can reach you.
What was that?
Tell people how they can reach Taxation Solutions.
It's taxationsolutions.net. Yes, we have fun here talking about a lot of other things, but realistically, the serious part is if you owe taxes to the IRS, $10,000 or more, $5,000 or more, give us a call. Get a free consultation at 877-996-6477. Again, 877-996-6477. Hey, and don't forget, we're on here at Ask the Experts 3 times a month. So tune in here. Go subscribe to Ask the Experts so you don't miss one of our episodes with Steve-O. And, man, thank you, Steve-O, for everything you do. We appreciate it.
Love you, bro. Hey, it's Barry Fowler. We'll see you again next month, Barry. That's going to do it for us today. We'll be back again with you next week with more Ask the Experts.
Thanks for tuning in today to the Ask the Expert show on W4CY Radio and Talk4 TV. Tune in next week and every week to hear more from our experts on personal injury, insurance, air condition repairs, estate planning, Medicare, and many other topics in the areas of legal, health, financial, and home improvement. See you next week.